Anderson, Williamson County's mayor, and today we have the distinction of having a conversation with Laura Chavarria, that's our Williamson County Animal Control and Adoption Director here in our county. We thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you for relocating here from Florida and taking on a very, very worthwhile and a very difficult job as the director. Anytime we're dealing with animals, cats and dogs and many others, it's a very difficult role. But you come to us with a wealth of experience. You were down in Florida, as we indicated, and before we get started, let's hear a little bit about Laura, and where do you come from originally, and how did you migrate to this area?
I'm originally from Van Wert, Ohio, which is the northwest section of Ohio. Lived there for 18 years, went to college in Columbus, Ohio at the great University of Ohio State.
We could debate that. Go ahead.
And then I got engaged, and my fiance lived in Florida. So I lived down there for about 6 years. I worked at a shelter as the office manager. I loved it. Have such a passion for the animals. Had great experience there. The weather was just a little too hot. We were lucky enough to get pregnant, and we were looking for a place to relocate that's very family friendly and closer to Ohio. So Tennessee was perfect. Williamson County is perfect. So we relocated here in May. My husband got a job, and then I was lucky enough to interview with you guys, and was lucky enough to get the director position. So
the position you had down in Florida, if my memory serves me correct, and I do have a chance sometimes to forget things, but if I remember correctly, it's about double the size of what we have here in our county. And on Claude Yates Drive, next to Franklin High School, on the way out by Columbia State, is where the physical location of it is. And
yes,
certainly we've made some modifications to it, but we have not enlarged our animal facility, which we do need to do. It's one of those priorities, that capital projects that we're looking for doing somewhere in the very near future. But when you compare the two, and you've been here now almost 100 days, I misspoke a little bit earlier because you just seem to have blended in with the fiber and the fabric of our community. But compare the two. Maybe some of the things that I know you've implemented, some new programs. We'll get into those a little bit. But comparing the two programs, the community, the values of people and their animals, similar, different?
I would say it's very different. Down there it was double the size. So the population of the county was double the size of what's here. We also took in about 10,000 animals annually. Here we take in about 4,500. Down in Florida, we were a stray facility only, so we didn't take in any type of owner surrenders. We were lucky enough to have a humane society in the same county that focused on that service. So here we are open admission, which is definitely new for me. But the community here is amazing. I've never seen such support when it comes to fostering. A volunteer group, I mean, we have over 100 volunteers that put in so many hours each month and go above and beyond. We also have Williamson Animal Services that creates such support for adoption centers. So I'm just not used to that. In Florida, we were kind of on our own. So I think here it was just such a benefit to work here because we have such a support. So that's definitely different for me.
And you're probably using words as people are watching this and they don't really understand. I think most of us understand what fostering an animal be, because we've heard that term in our court systems with some of our children. But kind of go through those fostering and adoption and surrendering. You're using words that probably a lot of people are not familiar with.
Sure. So when I say open admission, it means anybody that's a Williamson County resident, if they need to get rid of their animal, we have to take it in. So for example, on Monday we took in 50 animals. So you mentioned that the building hasn't been updated in a while. So we are bursting at the seams with animals. We really need to expand and make more room for them. But so that's an owner surrender, somebody that can no longer care for their animal. So we do take those in, as well as strays, which are animals that come in, no collars, no tags, no microchips. Fostering, we use fosters for a plethora of reasons. It could be an animal that's underage that can't go to adoptions yet. Could be an animal that has behavior issues that really needs somebody that's focused on rehabilitating them. Or it could be a mom and a litter of kittens that just need to get some meat on their bones and get healthy to be adoptable. So we really rely on the fosters. It could also be space. Like I said, we take in so many animals every day that we just run out of room. So we have great fosters that have, up to 10 animals that are fostering for us. So.
Now, Laura, when you look at our facility here, and it services all of the corners of our county, we have about 193,000 people in our community. You're dealing with animals not only in Franklin, Brentwood, Fairview, all points of our county. One of the things that I do know that we excel in a lot of things, but one of the things we really excel in out there is the ability to try to work with every community, every taxpayer, every individual comes through that door to try to meet the needs. And we encourage people to come out and not only volunteer, we cannot run the facility without the volunteers.
Absolutely.
There's no way we could afford the tax bill just to employ everyone. So we try to take that into consideration and show that appreciation to our volunteers. However, volunteers, there are certain rules and regulations they have to participate and follow and sign on, but we do encourage that.
Yes.
If a person is watching this and is interested in being a volunteer, how do they make contact with you? We put the phone number up at the bottom of the show here, but are there ways that you need people to help with as far as volunteering?
Yeah, so we make certain job duties, whatever you specialize in, we will tailor the volunteering to you. So we have people that do filing for us, people that really aren't hands-on animal people, so they'll do more of the behind-the-scenes, filing for us, paper filing. We have other people that bathe animals. They like to get them all sudsy and clean. We have others that groom, and that's their specialty. We have some people that actually have a grooming business, and they'll come and volunteer their services and groom animals that need grooming. So we kind of tailor it to what you'd like to do. If people are interested in volunteering, which we need them, like you said, they are the blood, sweat, and tears of our agency. We couldn't run without them. They can go online. There's a volunteer application on there, and then they go through orientation. They'll get some hands-on training, and then we'll talk to them about what they would like to do for the agency.
I want to come back to some of the wild game and distinction, because we're getting into the mating season, for an example of the deer this time of year in the fall time. In fact, on my way home, just about every day you can see the deer. They're much more active, and some of that is because of the mating season, but some of it is this particular time of the year, the season of the hunt is available, and so they're a little bit more skittish and they're a little bit more protective, and they don't always react the way we need to as we're driving down the road. But I do want to talk a little bit about our rescue efforts that we're making with a lot of our dogs, if you don't mind, and our cats. And then I'll get into some of the marketing, because I know you've got a staff out there that works tirelessly, and we appreciate our staff and our Williamson County employees. You just couldn't do it without them.
No, we really couldn't. We really couldn't. You were talking about rescuing of dogs, and we take them out of a lot of situations. We have enforcement in our agency, so we have officers that are out there every day educating the public on proper, responsible pet ownership. They also enforce the ordinances, so if we see an animal that's in imminent danger, we will seize that animal and cite the owner and go to court. So we have animals that we rescue out of those certain situations, and then we also work with rescues all over the country that will pull animals from our facility and rehome them. Obviously, there's certain criteria that they have to fit into to be a rescue, but we rely on them heavily. We work with PetSmart Charity Group that will come down and pick up to 12 animals a week and transport them up north to Wisconsin and Minnesota, where they have mandatory spay and neuter laws, where they don't have any stray animals. So they have to actually go to different states to get those. So we heavily rely on those type of rescues to help us out.
Now, those animals going up north, they've been spayed and neutered here at our facility. We have a veterinarian that's on staff that works full time almost spay and neutering the animals
Yes.
that we have. But one of the other new programs that you are have brought to the attention, it's kind of fairly new that wasn't. There was a program that you were down in the Florida area, and some of the other areas are kind of hitchhiking on some of the efforts that you're doing. I just recently read in the paper about Davidson County doing a feral program, which is interesting because when you first presented it to myself and many others sitting around the table, it's kind of a different way of thinking. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So we try our best to save lives at animal control, and one of the biggest things that I saw was feral cats were coming in. Now, feral cats are animals that are born in the wild, cats that are born in the wild. They differ from strays because strays have been domesticated and you can handle them. Feral cats run the other way. They're aggressive. So right now we humanely euthanize them. Studies have shown that that doesn't help the population in your community because the feral cats in the community will reproduce to try to fill the gap of the animal that you removed and euthanized. So what we want to implement is the TNR program, which stands for Trap, Neuter, and Return. If somebody brings in a feral cat to us, we will hold it for 3 days just to see if anybody will claim it. And then we will sterilize it, provide it a rabies shot, and then ear clip it, which basically is just notching the ear. That's a universal sign to show that it's a feral cat and it's been sterilized. And then the person will take it back and care for it. A lot of people like barn cats here, so that's a plus. So we're saving lives, and in the end, they're not reproducing, and the colonies will die out. So you usually will see success in 5 to 10 years. So have to be patient.
It's interesting to me the way you call the barn cats. As a boy growing up in East Tennessee, we had barn cats, and the barn cats, they're not really. I don't know that they're feral. I don't know they're domesticated. I know that they would come around when you'd feed them, but no, you weren't going to pick them up.
Yeah.
And occasionally, as they got a little bit older, they did become a little bit more docile in their activities. Maybe brush up against your blue jean leg. But again, they were never going to come in the house for 2 reasons. One, they weren't allowed by mom. And the other reason is they're not going to get too far away from their family.
They enjoy being outside. They enjoy being in the colony, and I enjoy them catching snakes and rats. I don't want them in my area, so that's why I enjoy feral cats in my house and in my yard.
Let's talk about some of the marketing techniques that you've been attempting to do with some special pricing to help eliminate and alleviate some of the animals that we have there, so we don't have to do as much euthanization, if that's the right word. That some specials that you've got going on for the month of October, and I'm not sure what you've got for November.
Sure. We try to do something each month to highlight what our needs are. So, for example, I believe August we were very over capacity on cats. So we did 9 lives for $9. So the adoption fee was $9 for any cat or kitten, and that included rabies vaccine, sterilization, free bag of food. So it was a very good deal, and it helped us out because we were at capacity. Now, October, we are having $31 days of October. So any animal, the adoption fee is $31, and again, that includes rabies and sterilization. For the months of November and December, we're going to do adopt a shelter pet and give them a home for the holidays. We haven't come up with a pricing yet. We're still working on it, but I think it's going to be great to highlight the animals that really need a home. We're also doing a November 29th Black Friday adoption event. We're going to be open from, I believe, 10 to 3, and any black animal will be $20.
When we look at the price structuring, and you do have in your responsibilities to weigh the pros and cons of running the shelter, running the adoption center within a budget restraints, just like every other department.
Sure.
It is oftentimes very difficult for you because when you're doing these 31 days in October, it's not the money that we're either losing or making, because you really just want to try to break even, but we're taking into consideration the life of the animal.
Correct.
And I mean, you have a great heart, and your staff out there has a great heart for the animals. It's a job that not many of us can do because you do get attached to those animals.
We do.
But at the end of the day, we have to operate the adoption and Animal Control Center under Tennessee Code Annotated, which is the law that says what you have to do with the certain animals. There's always room for improvement, no question about it. Your predecessor and now you have made huge strides in reducing the euthanasia down to a number that's much more respectable than what it was just a few years ago.
Yes, it's a huge improvement. And Doug Brightwell, I mean, he really did set me up to succeed. He made huge strides. And again, it goes back to the volunteers and the fosters that really make a difference, and the staff. They put in 10-hour days really caring for those animals and doing everything we can to avoid euthanasia. So it goes back to them.
Where was the passion in your life many years ago that sparked that? If there's someone watching this show and there's a young person saying, I really want to do this for a career. It's not one of those careers that many of us look into. We wind up being the passionate side of wanting to care for them like a volunteer, but there's a business side that has to be implemented because it has to occur. It's not the only thing. I don't want to stress that. But where was that passion for you when you were a young girl?
I wanted to be a veterinarian. I always told my mom that I wanted to be a ballerina and a veterinarian, and it didn't happen. I went to college, and obviously, you know, dancing was always part of my life. But I went to college and I started studying biology, and I just loved the biological side of animals and learning what makes them tick. And then I started volunteering at my local shelter, and I just got away from the medical side of it and just fell in love with just the shelter environment. I just saw a need for people my age to get involved. Everybody that worked there was a little bit older and getting ready to retire, so I really saw a need for my generation to step up and get involved. So I volunteered about 10 to 15 hours a week and started like edging my way and doing more in the office and getting more hands-on and learning from them because they had a wealth of knowledge. So they really inspired me. I saw how much they had a passion for it, and they weren't working for a paycheck. They were working because they were passionate. So that really inspired me. And then when I moved to Florida, I was lucky enough to get a job at that animal control agency, and they just took me under their wing and just inspired me to be a better person, to create a better environment for animals.
And so now you're in charge, and now you're the director. Now that you, at your age, have become a director of a very progressive, and we've got plenty of room to improve. What's down the pike for animal control and adoption centers across the state? I mean, we've got mixed reviews from one end of this state to the other, and different ways to handle different situations. Quite often, a lot of times, the area you're in falls under law enforcement side. Rather than having a freestanding agency that does its own enforcement side internally, many counties, and several of them touching this county, in the state of Tennessee, that falls under the jurisdiction of the sheriff. Yes,
animal controls have come a long way in the past 20 years. We've kind of gone from being the dog catchers, the dog pound, to being a place where people can enjoy the adoption process. So I think our goal in the next couple years is to create a warm, welcoming environment where people come there first to adopt an animal. They don't go to PetSmart, they don't go to Petco to buy an animal. They know that there's a need to adopt. So I think being proactive and being progressive is going to be the goal for animal control, putting programs into place to really cut down on overpopulation, and putting effort towards educating the public on responsible pet ownership, whether it's going to schools and educating young people because they're going to be inheriting the earth, and teaching them what responsible pet ownership is, or going to HOA associations and explaining what the ordinances are there. I think it's huge to educate. I think it starts with the community, and we really do need to reach out and get them involved. So I think the education program is something we're really going to beef up in the future.
Now at the shelter that we're at, we do have that piece.
Yes.
It's pretty much handled by one or one and a half people.
Yes.
But it is a step in the right direction for us to continue our education process here in our county.
It is. It's great. Mark does it. Mark and Debbie tag team it, and it's a huge undertaking. But I mean, he spends days with the Girl Scout groups and getting them involved and going to schools and going to Career Day next month. So it's just a full-time job, and I know he loves it, and it's so imperative in our agency.
Now, how many people are out working in our adoption center now?
We have roughly 20 full-time and part-time staff members. That runs the gamut of, we have control officers, we have a dispatcher, we have kennel techs, and then we have management and adoption specialists.
Or the passionate part of you certainly continues to come out, whether you're doing a TV show like this today or the days that we were interviewing you. You just have this strong passion to do the right thing. But one of the things that we haven't touched on this morning during this interview is the fact that you can't run it without the volunteers. You've got to have good facilities. We've got to have capable men and women working in our facilities with ongoing training, continuing education, latest and greatest. It's not always doing the same things the way we did it 8-10 years ago. But we also are very blessed in Williamson County to have some major sponsors that buy into what is attempting to not only occur but transform. We're very blessed. You mentioned PetSmart and their efforts of what we're doing, but I know there's others.
Yes, there's tons. Mars, we're lucky enough to have them in our community, and they provide pet food at no cost for all of our shelter animals, so that definitely helps out. Provides a nutritional diet for them, which makes them more adoptable and healthier. We have Williamson Animal Services that provide such a support for us. We have private donors. Cheryl Crow just donated. So we rely heavily on that because we couldn't provide the programs without those donors and that support.
So it is without question on my behalf and my part as a mayor, we thank all of those sponsors.
Yes.
And if there are others out there that in some way that feel like they could help, everything from towels and blankets to not only the food, there are so
Yes.
many other areas that we need help in to help our Williamson County animals. Let's talk about the enforcement piece. We spent most of our time this morning on the adoption and the processes and administration. Talk to us about a little bit about our enforcement side. Many times I know you get phone calls, we get them over here, skunks, animals of nature, I call them. What's our procedure?
Our procedure, and I could go on for hours about this because it ranges, but you mentioned skunks, so I think a lot of people have questions regarding skunks. We deal with skunks. We allow people to rent traps and humanely trap the skunk. We will come pick it up. Unfortunately, we have to euthanize them because they are rabies carriers. So any skunk that comes through, we euthanize it. And then we also go out for calls. Yesterday we went out on a cruelty case. We could go out on an abandonment case. Cruelty basically means if an animal isn't provided food, water, shelter, or vet care. That could mean grooming as well. And then abandonment, if somebody moves out of a dwelling and leaves an animal tethered or inside the house, we have to investigate those. A huge thing are animals not being current on rabies. It's huge for people to make sure that their animals are up to date on their vaccines. So the biggest thing that we enforce is not having your rabies up to date.
Well, and one of the things that we've often said, we don't want any of the animals out there not to have their proper shots, the vaccinations, particularly in the area of rabies. And we've just finished going through, we may still have a few days left, where we rely again on these volunteers, these veterinarians all throughout Williamson County to help us with giving those shots.
Yes, we provide the rabies clinics, and like you mentioned, I mean, the vet clinics throughout the county really stepped up and helped us out. We were providing rabies shots for $10, so we were trying to help the community and do that outreach to provide a lower cost vaccine so they could have their animals up to date.
And one that you probably get some phone calls, like myself, we don't see it as much in our community as some other areas, but from time to time we do, the large animals. If from time to time we do get a phone call. It's usually an abandoned large animal or some kind of abuse of that large animal, and we'll send the boys out and to try to investigate that and see what the best remedy is. You weren't here, but just 3 or 4 years ago, when times were a little tougher, people were having trouble making ends meet. Oftentimes, we were getting more of those phone calls than I had seen in several years. And unfortunately, we like to think that that just would never happen to animals, but the reality of it is, here in our community, fast-growing community, we have a lot of people. As you indicated earlier in the show, you had 50 surrenders just on a Monday. And quite oftentimes people do buy animals, bring them to their homes, their apartments, and they're just not a good fit.
Yeah.
Suggestions?
I think that's why we want to make such a wonderful adoption program, so that we can educate people how much responsibility goes along with adopting an animal or having an animal. The food, the vet care, the shelter, everything that encompasses it. So again, it goes back to education and reaching out to the community and letting them know how much is involved in having an animal, whether it be a small Chihuahua to a cattle. So.
All right, we've got less than a couple of minutes left, and I want to give you an opportunity to maybe say some things that I either have forgotten to ask you, something that's important to you, that's on your heart, that's critical for the facility that we have here and the processes as we go. So this is your time. That if I've overlooked something, please bring it up to our attention.
I think the biggest thing is just trying to get more people involved. Like you had mentioned, the volunteer program is key with our agency, and I want to personally thank every single person that volunteers, but we could use more. So if they're interested, please contact us and get involved, as well as fostering or donating. Like you mentioned, with it being colder out, we need bedding. It could go from towels to wash rags to pillowcases. So just getting more involved with the agency, and they're more than welcome to contact me directly if they have any questions.
We will probably never get to the point we have too many supplies or too many volunteers or too many dollars.
I would love to get to that point.
I would love for us to get there. We do need a new facility.
Yes.
We know that that's coming around the bend. We're making some strides and seeing how we perform. But through your efforts, I know we'll get there.
Thank you.
Through the efforts of our volunteers, bear with us. It's not always easy to be a volunteer. It's not always to be in charge with rules and regulations that you have to apply also. So thank you for locating in our Middle Tennessee community.
Thank you for welcoming and hiring me and being so supportive.
We are excited about you being on board, and we look forward to having many more interviews with you.
Me too.
Seeing the progress of Williamson County Animal Shelter and our adoption center and all the new programs you're bringing to.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County Mayor. See you around.
I am for the child who's had 7 addresses in a single year, because she's in foster care, because her father abused her, and her mother couldn't believe her. She is the child I am for. I am a CASA volunteer. I am you.